Hello, hello. Welcome to the Captain's Cast. I am Captain Garrett. I am your host. This is the Swords and Starships Channel. Welcome to a rather late edition of the Captain's Cast. So, yes, hail to the chat. Fu Man Blue, too late for me. See you Sunday. Fu Man Blue, Godspeed. And Regular in the chat also. Probably got to jump off early. Don't sweat it. I've tried something new tonight. Wanted to try it a different time. All right, I'll just be honest. Your captain had things to do today, and I figured better late than never. But anyhow, let me know what you think of the time. So this is the Captain's Cast, and we have lots to discuss tonight. So I have been watching Stargate SG-1. Fu Man Blue, could I lure you back? No, I'm just kidding. I'll catch you on the restream. So we're going to talk a little bit about Stargate SG-1. Also, Disney Plus, bleeding subscribers, 300,000. The company that hates making money, that would be the Disney Corporation. So I have that story for you. And a couple of interesting, I feel like Mr. Gunn is getting a bit thrown under the bus over there at DC. There's a couple of interesting stories about it is an SHIT show over there at DC. So we're going to talk about that. And I have had occasion to think a lot about Star Trek over the last couple of days. I did you all no favors, my dear sailors and star nuts, when I played for you the Klingon singing on the musical episode of Strange New Worlds. It was, and it turns out I was hoisted on my own petard because that stupid song that the Klingons sing, it has been stuck in my head for like days. I'm like, oh my God. I even know the lyrics because I watched it so many times. I know the lyrics to it. You know what the first line of it is? The Klingons come on the viewer, Captain Pike, you know. The first thing that happens is the Klingons break out into auto-tune music. And what do they say? Why you always calling when you got your trauma? Oh my God. And now it's stuck in my head. But I digress. I want to show you this piece that Robert Meyer Burnett did. I kind of wanted to show you his comments on Open Bar, but alas, it's not live. And this in the middle of the copyright gate of 2023. But in any case, hat tip to Robert Meyer Burnett, because I want to show kind of some of his thesis about what is wrong with modern Trek. And I consider him far more fair-minded on this issue than your captain. He's at least willing to compliment some of the Kurtzman Trek. I am not. But, you know, Star Trek is about nothing if not diplomacy and the occasional olive branch. And so I feel hearing the sober logic of one RBG is instructive on this issue. So we'll be talking about that. Is superhero fatigue real? Is it real, or is it all just in our heads? I have a couple of stories that might surprise you. that was the most media take. That was the most media intro ever. The truth might surprise you. And I'm continuing. Oh, yes, the new Continental trailer has dropped. You know, maybe I should just grab that first. Should I grab that first, or should we start with Snow White Cringe? What would you rather have? I'm going to move this up in the stack of stuff because I think we should get to this quickly. Let me know what you think about the time. I live to serve you, the dear audience. Is 1 p.m. Thursday? Should I make that the hard time for this live stream? Let me know. And your captain will not miss it again. But thank you, my dear crew, for sharing the dog watch with me. I do appreciate it. So anyhow, yeah, Wrangler said, I'm an old fart on the East Coast, have to work in the morning. Yes, I totally understand. Better things to do than listen to an old windbag drone on about Star Trek and its sad demise. But in any case, thanks for popping in. Permission to disembark whenever required. Granted. So, the Matrix trilogy. I watched the Matrix trilogy again. That goes in the stack of stuff as well. So we could talk about that a little bit. I find it fascinating to watch a 20-year-old film, iconic science fiction, and it was a film that by today's bizarre Hays Code standards really crushed it in the diversity department. Just absolutely crushed it. Unfortunately, I would consider the original Matrix trilogy, not that absolute horrific disaster that is Resurrections or Regurgitations or whatever it is. The original trilogy, I would say it's a fairly anti-woke movie these days. I will explain. I had a revelation when I attempted to classify your species. You're not actually mammals. No. Yes, it's Agent Smith. My Agent Smith impression. Did Hugo Weaving did they break the mold with that guy or what? He is absolutely, even when the film is not at its best, because I know there were some things about Revolutions that did not age well, I think. And it was criticized pretty heavily in its day. There's a couple things that didn't age well, but even when there's kind of the more, I would say, flawed parts of the Revolutions film, Hugo Weaving's delivery of even bad lines for Smith is just incredible. I'm like, where does the guy get that much expressiveness while seeming, Smith to me represents the banality of evil. He represents evil as bureaucracy, as the state, as just a cold, clinical, detached servant of the system, right? He represents that, the paperwork version of evil. And that's why I like Smith so much, because he was actually, I thought, kind of disarming the first time that he interrogates Neo. And what I find interesting about that is that within that sort of muted, bureaucratic pencil pusher kind of persona that Hugo Weaving does with Agent Smith, he somehow manages to be incredibly expressive. And there's these little emotions that he puts into his voice and his delivery of every line that I just marvel at it. I just do. I guess I'm simping for some reason about Hugo Weaving, but I watched that film and I'm like, the guy is just a great actor, because you don't even see that he's doing it until you watch for it. So, as you can see, Mr. Anderson, we've had our eye on you for quite some time. It's like he's acting like he's not he's acting like he's a boring pencil pusher, and yet is so interesting to listen to at the same time. I can't explain it. I don't know how he does it. All right, let's take a look at something that I dare say I could describe as cringe, shall we? I promise you it's not the singing Klingons. Hat tip RK Outpost. Ryan Kinnell with a great video on some thoughts that the Snow White actress, is it Rachel Zegler? Who the hell is she? I don't know. She just appeared one day in Hollywood, and now she's all the rage. Anyway, she had this to say.
22, 23 years old, something like. She's very, very young, but she clearly feels like she knows absolutely fucking everything. Let's just listen to this. Now, this is during the actors' strike out there on the picket line. We're not going to do it until we get fair treatment, blah, blah, blah. This is someone who got paid over $1 million. I think Halle Bailey got $1.5 million for her role in Little Mermaid. I imagine Rachel Zegler's compensation pretty similar to that. This is what she has to say about wanting more money from streaming.
If I'm going to stand there 18 hours in a dress of an iconic Disney princess, I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed on.
I deserve to get paid for every hour that it is streamed online. Here's something that I would then suggest. If that's what you want, right? If you want to get paid based on how many people are interested in something. That'd be a very interesting negotiating tactic. Would you give up your upfront payment of millions of dollars for what you're doing in exchange for that revenue at the end? That's something that probably the studios would actually listen to. That's not what any of these people actually want, though, because of
an excellent point from Ryan Kittle, Hat Tip RK Outpost, the angriest man on the internet. Yes, and if you didn't catch what she said there, she's so Rachel Zegler's out there on the picket line, 23-year-old, she's not exactly working at Walmart, okay? And she's out there on the picket line and she's like, well, I deserve to get paid for every second that I am on screen in this horrible, awful, stifling, iconic Disney princess dress. Gross. Oh, life is so hard. I demand it. I demand to be paid for every minute. And if my latte arrives 1 minute late and it's 1 degree below 180 Fahrenheit, I'm going to send it back. Like this is how actors are trying to get us on their side. The Film Actors Guild, ladies and gentlemen. So, but yes, and the angriest man on the internet had an excellent point there. In that, like she's saying, I want to be paid for every minute I'm streamed. Then, well, let's just workshop this a little bit, shall we? How about you give up the multiple millions of dollars you got as a flat fee for doing that film, and instead and deal is you get a percentage of all the revenue from every minute that is streamed, and that's what you get. And basically Ryan Kittle's point there is that what studio would turn that? Oh, of course the studio would say yes to that deal because they never have to pay her because they're not making any money. These are failures. Okay, Snow White is going to make negative dollars. It's going to make negative dollars. So she doesn't want that deal. The studio would love that deal because then they wouldn't have to pay her. They could just write it off. She would be slave labor at that point. So no, she doesn't actually want to be paid for every minute she's on screen. But Robert Meyer Burnett also made a great point about this, which is, what she fails to understand, because she's essentially part of a generation that really kind of has grown up without this model of, but essentially the entertainment model of television was you earn money through selling advertisements. How do you get advertisements to advertise on your network, on your TV show? Well, you have to demonstrate that people are watching. Ergo, ratings. Ergo, your show is only successful to the extent that it is earning enough viewers to bring in enough ad dollars to make a profit. So at no point is any actor on any television, the reason they're getting residuals is because there are residual advertising dollars that are coming in. So at no point does an actor on a current streaming show have that same benefit, because what is actually driving the revenue? There's an interesting call out that he made was that so Netflix, right, paid something like $100 million to get Friends on Netflix for 1 year. So for 1 year of the licensing rights to stream Friends on Netflix paid $100 million. That $100 million goes to the studio that owns, I believe that's Universal, right? If I'm not mistaken, that owns the rights to Friends. So how then do you decide who gets paid for what? The actors on Friends are getting paid. They are getting a chunk of that $100 million that Netflix paid. From Netflix's perspective, it's bought and paid for. There is nothing residual about it. So she clearly doesn't understand the business model, but it also indicates there is a complete and total disconnect. There is a disconnect between their relationship with their customers. They have no concept of but how do you even measure your success as a professional? How do you even measure your success as Snow White? Is it gonna be theater ticket sales? Because any time that these films bomb, they just say it's bigotry. It's, racist fans who don't want to watch a strong female woman. So they take no responsibility for when the movies fail. In any case, as the sun rises and the sun sets, the talent will always be a bit disconnected from the accounting side of it. So, she's young. It's like, go work for Walmart. Go work for Walmart. Demand more pay for that. Is it not, though, just a little, like, the most cringe thing about it is, like, imagine, this is my reaction to it. When I hear that, I think to myself, this is someone who's very lost. This is someone who is absolutely, like, at the total mercy of her ego. But I just think, is it nature or nurture? Is this just an individual who's got issues, or is it that we are creating a generation of young people who are so indoctrinated in this idea of, self-love and self-care and, speak your truth. And so everything they've been taught is through this subjective me lens. And when I hear her say, so this is her pitch to anyone listening. Here she is standing in front of a camera. This is her chance to tell the world what they need to know about the entertainment they love. And what does she say? She says, I am standing in a dress and I deserve to be paid. And it's about what I deserve. Imagine if she had framed it as, we're so lucky to work in this industry. And if you just knew how much, money these companies are making and are not sharing with people, if you just knew how much of that was happening, or if she said something like, we work so hard to bring you these amazing stories, and we love, it's such a privilege to work in this industry, but this industry is not going to survive if we can't pay good people, if we don't have the resources to make good stories. In other words, if she were framing it from the perspective of, look what we're trying to build and we can't. But she doesn't see it that way. She just sees it as, this is all about me and I've been screwed. And what's interesting to me is, I feel like almost any other strike, any other union protest, generally speaking, I don't think this is the attitude of collective bargainers. I don't think this is the attitude of union people in, like, let's say, the taxi union, for example. If you were to interview them on strike, the way that they would be speaking about their industry is in terms of we and ours and the public's. We as taxi drivers are being killed by Uber and Lyft, and it's unfair because we as taxi drivers are expected to do this and do that. We work long hours. I've seen people in those cars up and down, and they get mistreated and they get vomit on the floor, and nobody speaks for them. And, a lot of people late night in Manhattan are depending on us to pick them up and get them where they want to go. And we're here to tell you that unless we get fair pay, that's not, in other words, they'd be framing it all as we, the aggrieved, and you, the public, who are being underserved. And I think it's interesting and also unsurprising that a 23-year-old actress whose film has not even come out, has not even had any success yet, and by all indicators looks like it's going to be an abysmal failure. All she's about, like, well, I've been standing in this dress and it sucks. So screw you. I need more money. It's too much fun. It's not, look, it's just, I just find it funny. Look, it's anyone at 23 years old, of course, I was nothing but humility and just extra humility when I was 23. I would never have been so utterly opinionated or self-focused when I was 23. So I can't really relate, but I do know that this is something that happens in some young people. So she deserves a little grace for that. She does herself no favors, though. Hey, should we check out the new Continental trailer? I may have to watch for copyright because you never know. But let's try that. Let's try this. Let's see how this goes. I have not seen this.
A suit doesn't make a man. It's what's inside the suit that counts.
So I have not seen this yet, so I'm looking forward to this. And let me just make sure I don't get any red flags. All right, we'll keep it rolling.
It's resourcefulness and perhaps an open heart.
Well, what are you waiting for?
I haven't finished my drink.
This sacred institution wields power beyond your imagination.
Dude, Mel Gibson is in this. Like, okay, so, and of course, for those who don't know, this is the trailer for The Continental, which is a prequel to the John Wick series, of which I am a great fan. I am a massive John Wick fan. I am very skeptical. I am very skeptical of any new television adaptation these days. Just, you know, we've been burned so many times. It's like, is it going to be woke? Is it going to be a bunch of garbage? Let's see. So far, sexy woman, check. Mel Gibson, check. Couple of points in the favor of the Continental. We continue.
Winston, your brother stole something from me. What he took is very important to a lot of very dangerous people. Find him, because if you don't, I'll bring the weight of this whole institution down on you both. Sharon, show our guests the door.
Pretty sweet so far. I definitely like the dated New York vibe. Very cool.
We made a big mistake coming here.
You're my brother, Frankie.
We have to strike first. And I need all the help I can get.
How are we supposed to believe a guy in an ascot can pull this off?
It's a cravat. If we're gonna take on the Continental, every freak in that hotel will be after us.
Well, that's lovely.
We need guns. Lots of guns.
So that's interesting, that line. So John Wick, played, of course, by Keanu Reeves, uses this line in one of the John Wick films. I forget which one, where he says, "I'm gonna need guns. Lots of guns." And that's definitely an homage to The Matrix, because, of course, that is one of Neo's lines. We're gonna need guns. Lots of guns. It seems a bit odd, though. It seems a bit stolen valor for Winston to be using that line. So are they just saying that, like, now if we do the line, we're going to need guns, lots of guns, it's an homage to The Matrix, it's now a John Wick thing because it's got Keanu Reeves in the trilogy of films? I don't know. I don't like that. I don't like that.
This is more than vengeance. This is justice.
Can you dig it?
Let's take this house and everything that comes with it. And away we go.
I honestly cannot figure out whether I think this is total over the top camp or just really smart stylization using the 1970s as the backdrop, 1970s New York, kind of like like those classic blaxploitation films and Dirty Harry and stuff like that. Like they're kind of going for that vibe, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It seems a bit campy, which isn't necessarily a bad thing in the trailer. Yet here's the problem. And actually, when we get to Robert Meyer Burnett here in just a minute, this kind of ties in. But something has happened. There has been a paradigm shift in filmmaking ever since, I would argue, Star Trek 2009, but really the MCU and the infamous MCU humor, which is that everything is self-referential, everything is self-conscious, everything is kind of a joke of itself. And that is not the right tone for John Wick. It is not, I know this isn't John Wick exactly, but it's the John Wick universe. It's not the right tone for it to be making fun of itself. Now, having a little bit of fun at its own expense, sure. But there is a difference, and I don't know. It seems a little bit too not taking itself seriously. Some cool action scenes, very cool action scenes. I'm a little bit worn out on this trope of like the jumping out the building window and surviving. It makes me think of that clip from The Other Guys. What was it? Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there you go. I think I actually literally pulled exactly the clip I need. Hang on. Share.
Jansen and Highsmith, you're rolling heavy. Cream puff.
You gotta be shitting me! You can't keep me cooped up in here, okay?
Yeah, so these are the two. If you've never seen the film The Other Guys, it's such a great movie. It's hilarious. But basically, these are the two rock star cops that the other guys wish they were like. And of course, they're always in the high-speed chases. They're always super cool. And so here they are at the beginning of the movie in one of their usual tearing up the city in one of their crazy, lethal weapon style capers. And this is what happens.
Special Forces zip line. These guys are pros. You thinking what I'm thinking, partner? Aim for the bushes. There goes my hero. Watch him as he goes. There goes.
Dude, the first time I saw that, oh my God, I just about died. I was laughing for like 2 minutes. I couldn't stop. Because you're kind of like, I love how you're wondering. You're like, what are they doing? Where are they going? And slowly but surely it becomes clear. The best comedy gags in something like that are always the ones where it's kind of unraveling as the camera, the story is being told in reverse in a way. It's like, because you're thinking, oh, they have a plan. I just, as the viewer, have not figured it out yet. And it turns out to be the opposite. It's like, no, you were right. Jumping off the building is a terrible idea. They didn't have a plan. Anyway, my point is, this is what I think of when I think of John Wick lately, because they just jump out of windows and they just land on cars like, oh, that was like an air mattress that they landed on. It's like, no, that was a car from a 5-story fall. Like that's not even a hospital trip. That's DOA. Like you're dead. So, and I noticed this in the Continental trailer. Apropos of nothing, speaking of that type of comedy, I guess we're just going on a curiosity journey here. But This one could be a difficult pull. This one might take some doing. Monty Python. Let's see if I can figure it out. See if I can find this clip. It's too obscure. I figured it probably was. There's a great Monty Python sketch that this reminds me of also, which is there's a man and he's running around. He's got like these kind of like mechanical wings, and he's flapping these mechanical wings, right? And for just like 3 minutes, they just show this guy running across a field somewhere in Scotland or something, and he's flapping these wings, and he's jumping, and he's trying to fly, and it's clear that he's an inventor, right? There's no spoken lines in it. There's no dialogue. You just are kind of piecing it together as you watch it. So he's some kind of inventor. He thinks he's invented wings that can help him fly, and he's trying to get them to work, and he keeps running and jumping, and he keeps jumping and falling, and it's kind of funny, and you're laughing, but you're starting like, okay, what's the point of this? And then suddenly there's a clip of him, and he's just like, the ground is here, and he's flying. And you're like, oh, wow, he got it working. And so you're following him. And then the camera pans over, and there's like a solid wall right in front of him. And he just goes, and he just splats right into the wall. And then the camera slowly turns. And you realize the camera was sideways. He wasn't flying. He had jumped off a cliff, and he had failed, and he had been falling the whole time. And that was, anyway, there you go. Your captain has just recounted a Monty Python sketch horribly. That's how much I care about you, my dear sailors and startups. I work so hard. So my question is this. Is superhero fatigue for real? Well, try this headline. Oops, nope, don't invite. There we go. Hang on, not that one. This for Bounding into Comics. Arrowverse co-creator Mark Guggenheim disagrees with the idea of superhero movie fatigue. Instead argues that audiences now want studios to justify the experience of going out to the theater. So we have talked a lot. So we read Tomek Baginski's thesis on one of our previous live streams, talking about how Tomek Baginski being one of the producers, the executive producers on The Witcher, and how his theory about why we've had to make changes on the Witcher series from the books and deviate from the source material is because American audiences, they require a more simplistic story. They can't understand a story that has multiple factions with complex motives that are competing with each other. And so we have to simplify it. And the younger an audience is, the less they require a plot. And so it's just disheartening. It's disheartening to see how we loved the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We loved, the era of, the Nolan's Batman trilogy. I mean, we had some incredible films back in that era. The 27 films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, phase 1s, 2, and 3 were truly incredible. And Mahler did a great sort of backwards breakdown of like, why did all those films work? And he kind of explained how, well, Civil War, why did that film work? Well, it worked because of the film before it, right? Which was established The Winter Soldier, which established the rift between, Captain America and his belief in the system, and, Tony Stark and his differences with Cap started to kind of were set up in that film. Well, what led to Winter Soldier? Well, that would be the events in Avengers and etc. So he kind of broke down how every layer of the Marvel Cinematic Universe in the beginning was carefully structured. And we as fans fell in love with that. And then the fourth is female. And Kevin Feige announced, well, we're going to have a 2-to-1 ratio, women to men, and we're going to fix everything wrong with comic book movies and the patriarchy. And then they trashed everything. They took everything that was just a good, simple superhero story with plenty of awesome, strong, independent babes. And they squeezed the life out of it. And then what did they do? They blamed us. They blamed us, the fans. And so it's been gloomy. It's been gloomy. However, there are definitely those in the industry. Your captain would be remiss if I did not bring you some good news. And so here is a piece of good news. There are people who get it, folks. While many analysts have begun to float the idea of superhero movie fatigue as a reason for the genre's rapidly declining box office returns, Arrowverse co-creator, and I do hear great things about the Arrowverse, although I have not myself partaken, Mark Guggenheim has instead posited that the true culprit behind the public's growing disinterest in blockbuster brawls is their overwhelmingly lackluster quality. The former Arrow showrunner offered his opinion on the current state of comic book films during a guest appearance on the 54th episode of venture capitalist Sriram Krishnan and entrepreneur Arathi Ramamurthy's self-titled podcast. Asked by Krishnan whether he thought comic book movies, both the Marvel side and DC side, are reaching a point of exhaustion where every origin story, costume, discovery of powers, introduction of the villain, the sidekick, multiple timelines is so overdone and so explored that there's going to be fatigue? Guggenheim opined, I think superhero movies are going to become like what Westerns are, which is a genre that you revisit every now and again. I question myself how much of this is actually superhero movie fatigue and how much of this is not great superhero movie fatigue. Bingo. Exactly. Because here's the thing, the Legend of Tomorrow co-developer explained. One of the most successful movies of the year is Across the Spider-Verse, which is a film with all the tropes, including the multiverse, and it's a huge hit. Why is it such a huge hit? Because it's done so well. I slightly disagree, but there was a lot to like and admire in Across the Spider-Verse. So the point, the captain will allow it. Captain will allow it. I mean, it's so good, he continued. So I don't think of it in terms of like the audience is tired or not tired. I think what the audience is basically telling us is what their dollars stand for. For a long time, superhero movies that were not particularly good, Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase 4, we're doing gangbuster business because, well, just the flywheel and everything. And he's exactly right. What has your captain said on this very stream? They were coasting. You know, I would say DC was coasting on the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight trilogy, and Marvel Cinematic Universe phases 4 and 5, if they can even be called phases, because phases implies planning and story structure, which those phases did not have. They were coasting. Doctor Strange Mom was coasting on that. I would argue, actually, frankly, that MCU Phase 4 and 5 were coasting not just on that, but also on the Sony Spider-Man, because, we had no more Captain America. Steve Rogers is Captain America. We had no more Captain America. We had no more Iron Man. Hulk was now Smart Hulk, which is lame and ridiculous. And Thor was now fat fighting himself Thor, which is also lame and ridiculous. And so what are we left with? We still have Spidey. And Spider-Man, as you well know, is my favorite superhero of all time. Spider-Man was our star. He was our rock star. And we got a good one. No Way Home was, really the first truly great Tom Holland Spider-Man film, I thought. Had its problems, not a perfect film. But it was great. And I think it brought a lot of people back that after the disaster that was Eternals and the disaster that was what the hell was it? Oh, Shang-Chi and the Nine Rings. You know, those two films that were clearly not as interesting, and they were not bringing in the new audience. I think Spider-Man kind of injected a little false life into the MCU. What do you think, my dear sailors, is starting? Do you think that No Way Home could have been made under Feige's watch? Do you think they could have made that film as good as it was with just Feige? Let me know in the comments, or on the restream. Let me know what you think about this. And by the way, you are watching the Captain's Cast on the Swords and Starships channel with your host, Captain Garrett. Please do like and subscribe. And if you're lurking, watching, or catching it on the restream, or just popping in for a minute before quickly running for the hills, whatever the case, thank you very much for stopping by, and your support is appreciated. We are on the Captain's Cast, where permission to come aboard is never required, but always granted. And so my question to you then, wherever you may be in that great beyond, could Feige have presided over Spider-Man No Way Home? I submit to you he could not. I submit to you, look, Spider-Man No Way Home had not one, not two, but three male leads, all working together as a kind of team of brothers, which I thought was that was actually a great emotional core. I thought one of my favorite lines in the whole film was when Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man says, "I always wanted brothers." And that got me right here. I really was like, that was a great moment. Do you think they could have made that? No way. No way. That was like way too many Y chromosomes to be celebrating and have as main characters in a film. So yeah, they were coasting. They were coasting. Returning to Guggenheim's point, thankfully, says Guggenheim, because I think this is good for comic book movies, I think it's good for the business, I think it's good for the audience. Thankfully, I think we're past that, meaning we're past the coasting part. The audience is basically saying to us, you've got to justify the experience of going out to the theater and seeing this, as a movie, as opposed to waiting a couple months to watch it on Disney Plus. That is another great point, because he's basically saying, like, they basically figured, all right, well, the check's in the mail. The check's in the mail. All we got to do is let them know it's MCU, and they'll show up when we put it on Disney Plus. And it was work from home filmmaking. So, yes, speaking on the topic, during a June interview with Rolling Stone, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, Phil Lord and Christopher Miller themselves similarly argued that audiences were not tired of superhero films, but rather were exhausted with the low-effort slop. By the way, that would be the Scarlet Spider right there. I hated the depiction of this character in the Spider-Verse. This is why I take issue with this characterization of Into the Spider-Verse as a great film. This character is a perfect example. What was I just talking about? Self-referential, self-deprecating, can't take itself seriously. Basically, Ben Reilly, who, if you don't know Spider-Man lore, is a clone of Peter Parker, which was horrifying for him to discover, and he had to sort of discover his own identity as a different Spider-Man, and he became the Scarlet Spider with one of the most badass Spider-Man costumes ever, by the way. In this film, Across the Spider-Verse, he basically is a joke. He's essentially an incel with a bunch of melodramatic angst. He's basically an emo. He's an emo. It's pathetic. And it's like, yeah, okay, great. Thanks for turning another Peter Parker-based character into a complete joke. Peter Parker clone, but he's still Peter Parker adjacent. So anyhow, Miller of Into the Spider-Verse said, Across the Spider-Verse, said, I don't believe it's superhero fatigue. I believe it's a movie that feels like a movie I've seen a dozen times before fatigue, said Miller. If you're using the same story structure, the same style, and the same tone, and the same vibe as movies and shows that have come before, it doesn't matter what genre it is, it's going to be boring to people. See, I actually don't even totally agree with this. I actually don't, because, pretty much all of the Phase 1 films followed a fairly similar, just at the basic level, the plots, the story structural elements were fairly similar in that you typically had, if it wasn't an origin story, you had a superhero story, the villain emerges, they have to fight the villain, there's a big sort of third act climactic battle. But the difference is some of these battles I found boring, some I was glued to. The final act of Captain America Winter Soldier is absolutely gripping. Then you have something like Wonder Woman, which I love Wonder Woman, the first film. But that final battle between her and Ares, I just totally started to check out. And I get tired of, oh, he's got to throw her, then she's got to throw him, and then he throws her again. And it's like, what's actually interesting about this? Mission Impossible basically does the same formula in every single movie, but somehow they're able to step up the action. They're able to show you something new in a car chase scene every single time that you've never seen before. John Wick is basically him gunning down about 50 guys in every action scene, and yet they find a way in every film to make that new and interesting and fresh. So I don't actually agree with him that the problem is they're using the same story structure. The problem is that they are misunderstanding what people actually love. See, they're misunderstanding, like, Guardians of the Galaxy humor worked because Guardians of the Galaxy was a quirky, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of a motley crew, odd couple kind of a story. It's basically a bunch of odd couple characters thrown together. And for that type of film, that kind of comedy works. But also Guardians of the Galaxy took itself seriously. But Miller goes on, and the audience in the theater cannot be sustained on Easter eggs and reveals. Agree? Or even these big, crazy multiverse stakes. Definitely agree. That's the understatement of the year. In fact, there are no stakes in multiverses. Multiverses ruin stakes. Multiverses ruin dramatic tension because nothing matters. But by the way, if I could just interrupt myself for just a minute, have you played BioShock Infinite? Any of my gamers out there, have you played BioShock Infinite? BioShock 1 and 2 are two of the most brilliant pieces of science fiction literature, I would argue, I've ever experienced in a video game. I mean, they are brilliant. They are brilliant works of science fiction literature in the form of a video game. And now BioShock Infinite, on the other hand, I would say BioShock Infinite is to BioShock as Lovecraft Country is to H.P. Lovecraft. That is basically what I would say. BioShock Infinite had a lot of beautiful thematic elements. I did like the core characters of Booker and Elizabeth. But the main problem with BioShock Infinite is what? It was about an infinite multiverse. And the game, the actual storyline of the game was pretty powerful, moving, and engaging right up until there is a critical moment in the game where basically Elizabeth has the ability to move between different multiverses. That's like one of the plot points. Well, at a crucial point in the game, you are going to recover a person that you need to solve a quest and to save like a rebel cause, and that's the whole way you're going to get to the goal, right? And they discover that guy is dead, and there's nothing they can do. So what do? They just jump to another reality where that guy's alive and well. But do they go and get him and bring him back to the rebels? No. They just jump to another reality in which they don't even need to get the guy. They have everything they need. And then it becomes clear that there's actually no stakes in this story at all, because basically they're just hopping into different realities where everything we just played, everything we just experienced, the struggles of the characters, the rebellion against the racist oppressors of Columbia, the floating city Columbia, all of that means nothing because we're now in a new world. Multiverses destroy the stakes and the tension in a story. Now, it's not to say they can't be done. They can be done well. Everything Everywhere All at Once was done very well. The Star Trek The Next Generation episode Parallels was pretty awesome. I just think you have to be very sparing. You have to be very sparing with your use of multiverses. And sadly, they just are not over there at Marvel. So, but this is actually, I think, pretty good news. I mean, we have evidence here that there are those in the industry who are starting to figure it out. They are starting to figure out that this is the wrong strategy. And I'm trying to think, I believe I had one more. Did I have one more headline on this? I do have more good news for you, though. I definitely have more good news for you. Before I get to the more good news, let's just, I want to see what you think about this. As you know, I am an eternal skeptic. I am an eternal skeptic. Here is a scoop from Cosmic Book News that I want for your consideration, my dear sailors and starnauts. Daredevil Born Again will be TV mature like the Netflix series. Confirms our Marvel insiders from Comic-Con. Hat tip Matt McGloin over there at Cosmic Book News. I will believe this when I see it. I will believe this when I see it. We were spoiled. You know, we were so spoiled in the 2010s for superhero content. The Netflix Daredevil series, those 3 seasons was so freaking good. That was some of the best superhero story I've ever seen committed to live action. 10 out of 10. 10 bars and an eagle on the epaulets for the captain is the Netflix Daredevil series. It was just close to the ground. They nailed Matt Murdock and his character. There was a little bit of melodrama with him and Foggy and Karen, but that does not take away from how incredible Vincent D'Onofrio's amazing Kingpin was. I will say I got a little bit tired of the ninjas, the magic ninjas. I just felt like somehow that plot was less interesting to me than a really awesome gangster that's running New York. And just, yeah, definitely. So what's the problem with the Disney Plus version, Daredevil Born Again? Look, they are going to bitchify this character. They are going to bitchify Matt Murdock. He is a Catholic character. He is antithetical to MCU. There's no way they're going to do a good Daredevil series. But what am I to make of this? What am I to make of this story? So the story goes, just as my Cosmic Con insiders filled me in a couple of weeks ago, Daredevil Born Again is said to be TV mature, similar to the popular Marvel Netflix series. Scooper Daniel, RPK, has said that Daredevil Born Again is expected to maintain the TV MA rating and will be dark and mature, like the original Netflix show. He also adds, the show will be split into 2 parts with 9 episodes each. Dang it. Let me see if I can get this. I don't have, I want that tweet, actually. Let me see if I can pull that up here. Okay, hang on 1 second. Well, I'll just skip it for now because they had in this tweet, they had a picture of basically the Born Again, like gold mask, but it had like blood spatter on it. I think it's probably just fan made, but it's pretty cool. It's like, that could be cool. What was I told about Daredevil Born Again regarding the question of the TV rating and how close it will be to the Netflix series? Recall Vincent D'Onofrio said the MCU series would be very different. And even Charlie Cox said Daredevil Born Again will attempt to appeal to a slightly younger audience and will be different. AKA, they're going to feed it through the Disney algorithm wood chipper. They are going to feed it through the Marvel cinematic humor. Everything's a joke. Everything's a gag. Wood chipper. They're just going to make it like all the same sludge they've served. That's what that tells me. The article goes on. So yeah, both actors have said something more like Daredevil in She-Hulk. However, the good news is, according to this scooper, I am told that the comedic and goofy version of The Man Without Fear is all out the door. Similar to what Daniel RPK says above, Marvel insiders at Comic-Con filled me in that just like Echo, oh no, that's not good. That's not a good comparison. Daredevil Born Again in its current state is a complete disaster, but the good news is the show's getting retooled. Okay, Okay, I jumped the gun on that. Okay. Yeah, okay. I revised my statement. So just like Echo, Born Again is reputedly a complete shit show. But they're retooling. You know, this could be a sign. If this is true, and I will believe it when I see it. Big grain of salt, folks. We're in grain of salt territory here. But if this is true, this could mean that they're starting to figure it out. They are starting to figure out we have got to stop bitchifying these characters. We have got to stop betraying what made these characters so popular. The scooper goes on. I'm told things were already underway to fix Daredevil Born Again, but then the strike happened. So filming had to be stopped and the writers couldn't work on new scripts. And that once the strike is over, Marvel will continue to fix the show to make it more in line with the popular, mature Netflix series. This all fits in line with what has previously been said, in that Feige is ditching the comedy writers who were in part responsible for destroying the MCU, and now Feige is spending money on quality writers. Oh, you know what this makes me think of? I always think of like my favorite scenes, and it makes me think of Alec Baldwin's mean, nasty salesman speech in Glengarry Glen Ross, the movie about salesmen. He's like the sales hotshot, and he shows up to give all the failing sales guys just a kick in the ass, and he just browbeats them for like 6 minutes straight. You have to have seen this clip, right? And I'm just thinking of the part where he, so the whole story is that you've got this kind of failing group of salesmen, and they're all just, this job sucks. I suck at sales. And they bring this like hotshot salesman in to just read him the riot act. And so he pulls, they say the leads are shit. The leads that we're getting are crap. And Alec Baldwin's character just pulls out, his box of leads, and he says, do you know what these are? These are I forget what the line is, but these are the premium leads. These are the leads the top salesmen get. And you don't get them, because to give them to you would be like throwing them away, because you wouldn't know what to do with them if you got them. This is how I feel about this concept of Feige with quality writers. I feel like the Feige bot is like, this is not working. Must retool Marvel Cinematic Universe. Searching quality writers. Quality writers will pay. And say, he doesn't know what a quality writer is. He has no clue what they are. So we'll see. But it's intriguing. It's intriguing to think about. Recent Marvel projects also getting new writers include Fantastic Four, Blade, and Thunderbolts. Thor: Love and Thunder was a disaster. Quantumania was an even bigger disaster. I would argue it is the worst film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And the Marvel Disney Plus shows have been atrocious. Atrocious. Failure is the word you're looking for. In fact, check out this headline. You want proof of that? Oh, Grogu. After the Walt Disney Company reveals another 300,000 subscriber loss for Disney Plus of users, a 300,000 subscriber loss of users in the United States and Canada, pundit declares the streaming service is dying. So in their quarterly report, the Walt Disney Company revealed the company lost 300,000 Disney Plus subscribers in the United States and Canada in their latest third quarter financial earnings. Oof. Oh, geez. It couldn't happen to a more hardworking company. Oh, my God. Secret Invasion. This just reminds me of the Dumb and Dumber line. Just when I think you couldn't be any dumber, you go and do something like this and totally redeem yourself. Except in this case, Secret Invasion did not redeem Disney in my eyes. That was the saddest. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Ad nauseum. In the company's third quarter of fiscal year 2023 earnings report, Disney Plus subscribers, United States and Canada, declined from 46.3 million to 46 million. That is a loss of 1% of all Disney Plus subscribers in the United States and Canada. So there you have it. The Disney Plus shows have been atrocious, all of which have turned off fans. Mandalorian Season 3, garbage. Obi-Wan Kenobi, garbage. Boba Fett, what the hell was that? Garbage. Andor, nobody saw it. Snore. Just sad, because it had some good parts. So apparently, goes the rumor, Kevin Feige is trying to repair Marvel. Well, I don't doubt that. Look, there's not a doubt in this captain's mind that Kevin Feige wants to repair Marvel. I mean, this is the cash cow, of course. What I am in doubt of is that he has any concept, of why it's failing. Even Bob Iger said they are pulling back on the MCU, which you don't do if something is successful. Think of this. They are pulling back on the MCU? What an absolute travesty. It's like the fallen statue of Ozymandias in the deserts of Egypt. If that's where the fallen statue of Ozymandias is. Anyway, it's the fallen statue of Ozymandias with the inscriptions. What is the Ozymandias inscription? I don't want to butcher it. It's escaping me at the moment. Ozymandias inscription. Look upon, what was it? My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look upon my works, ye mighty, and despair. That's the line. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. And so, of course, the irony of it is the statue is lying in ruins. The statue is meant to be an imposing, intimidating monument that is to strike fear in the hearts of all of this tyrant's enemies. And instead, it's become a commentary on the state of this tyrant's empire, which is it's in ruins. And that is what I think of when I think of they're pulling back on the MCU. It's like they managed to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory with Marvel's Phase 4 and 5 in like 5 times in a row. Really, it's more than that. It's like 10 times in a row if you count the Disney Plus series. It's stunning. Yes. So they are pulling back on the MCU, which you don't do if something is successful. This one, apropos of nothing, Fantastic Four borrowing from Captain America. You know, I just cannot muster any concern over the new Fantastic Four. I just think, who cares? Like, it's going to be garbage. They're just... I will believe that this new Daredevil series is going to be... will it possibly have some rated R moments in it? Maybe. Is it TV mature because they think it's more challenging material? Maybe. I just find it hard to believe that that is going to correspond to it being a grounded, dramatic story. I don't think they're capable of it. So I have a very difficult time getting excited for Fantastic Four. I truly do. All right. Well, let's check out something cool, shall we? So I have had occasion to think about just the absolute state of Star Trek after that horrendous musical episode. And as I pointed out on my last live stream, I am opposed to the idea of a musical in Star Trek because I simply don't think that it fits the tone and the world of Star Trek. Cough button. I think that, Star Trek is meant to be a grounded story. The fact that it takes place in a future in which we can travel the stars faster than light is only the setting. The actual stories are meant to be intellectual, thought-provoking, engaging. They're meant to be human stories. It simply does not fit the tone of the Star Trek universe, which is a maritime space military, to have people running around the ship, dancing and singing like it's a Broadway musical. That being said, Star Trek is not bereft of music and culture and things like that. So if you were to do a Star Trek musical, at the very least, you could make it fit the actual lore of Star Trek. And so this brings me neatly along to essentially what Robert Meyer Burnett had to say about why is Star Trek in such a sorry state? What is actually wrong with it? And I could rant and rave about it, and certainly I will. Don't think I won't. But I really like how he puts it here. Now, I do not agree with RBG on everything here, because I definitely think there are times he's going too easy on them. However, I like his fair-mindedness about it. I really do. Let me pull up. I need to find the clip here. There it is. Okay, here we go. You can tell I was looking for Monty Python.
I don't know why it's so hard. I mean, how hard can it be? You've got over 55 years of how a franchise works, what gave it its great appeal, why it became legendary, why it went from one generation to the next.
It's been a long road.
Enterprise.
Since 2009, there has been a fundamental effort by everybody involved to turn Star Trek into something that it isn't. And people would say, but Rob, Star Trek could be anything, could it not? Perhaps that's true. Maybe it could be anything. Maybe I'm off base. But the problem is, nothing that they've really done since Star Trek 09 has worked. It hasn't ignited the franchise. It hasn't cemented any of the new characters into pop culture consciousness. Modern Star Trek hasn't leapt beyond anybody who's seen it. So has it worked? Has it sparked merchandising? They keep trying to reinvent Star Trek and make it relevant to the modern day.
So he is so right about this. Hat tip the Burnett Network. That's his YouTube channel, the Burnett Network. Give him a follow. And definitely check out this video. It's called The State of Modern Star Trek. This is excellent. I'm not going to play all of it, but there's a couple of parts of it that I want to play because, he mentioned on a live stream recently that he gets people in his comments sometimes, accusing him of being a gatekeeper and how dare you? How dare you define Star Trek? And if you don't like it, don't watch it. And he's like, I find this irrational because I'm not gatekeeping anything. I don't have control of anything. I have never told anyone not to like Star Trek. If you like these new Star Trek series, fine. You have every right to like these new series. I would never tell anyone not to like it. I'm just telling you, this isn't what I see as the 57-year legacy of Star Trek. This is not in alignment. And so, let's just say he is much more forgiving than your dear captain. I, on the other hand, command you. I command you not to like modern Star Trek. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, look. Does anyone like it? I really feel like the only people that like current Star Trek are two people. Desperately blue-pilled Star Trek fans who are clinging to the idea that this is still like the Deep Space Nine and the Next Gen that they used to know, that this is the continuation of that. And they just want Star Trek to continue. And so that they are willing to just swallow the blue pill, live in the Matrix, and just believe that this isn't glossy garbage. And I have nothing but sympathy for people in that position. I was in that position when the Kurtzman verse started. I was in that position when I saw Star Trek 2009. I wanted that film to be as good as I initially thought it was. And it's like, the more I think about it, the more I realize it's like, that is That's me clinging to the idea that Star Trek could have a second life. And it could, but not in that form. And the second type of person that likes this Drek, I think, is just Reddit warriors. They the Grace Randolph. Wow, there was a lot of Easter eggs in this one. Let's talk about them. I feel like that's like the crowd that likes modern Star Trek. They don't, as long as it's shoveling more of their little memes about, they, them pronouns and, stupid shit like that. Like that's what they just little glossy things, little member berries sprinkled in here and there. Like, oh, look, it's Spock and he's eating bacon because, he's supposed to be logical, but he's not in this episode. It's like, these are the people that, I highly doubt. I highly doubt when they were 12 years old, they were sitting on the floor in front of their TV, glued to Star Trek The Next Generation, the episode The Drumhead, in which Picard defends his crew against a witch hunt. I highly doubt that these were the types that were interested in that. And so that's why I wanted to show you Robert's take, because I think he summarizes this brilliantly. But as he points out, he's like saying, I'm not saying don't like Star Trek. I'm not saying don't enjoy the new stuff. I'm saying this is what I see.
Which is strange, because you'd think that it would be a no-brainer, because you have so much Star Trek to look at and go, well, that's how you do it. That's how you do it right. And yet they can't. Why? Well,
oh God, them.
I don't think they fundamentally understand it, because they're trying to turn Star Trek into something other than Star Trek.
Yes, they are. Oh God, Prodigy. He is way more forgiving on Prodigy and Lower Decks than I would be. All right. Here, let me go forward to this clip. Kurtzman Trek.
Clearly, they're not happy with where the Star Trek franchise is. And I would put that squarely on what we've been given as modern Star Trek. And they don't ever seem to do that. They don't ever seem to say, maybe
this would be
approach that we've been taking to
Alex Kurtzman, the low talent hack. Just have you ever seen a more soy infused creature than this? Look at this. Oh, that's an alpha male right there.
To Star Trek over the last 12 years. Maybe that's the problem. But nope. Why do they keep getting to make Star Trek? I don't understand. I really don't. I do not get it. They're all rehashes. Even Star Trek Discovery, which started out as taking place in supposedly the canonical Star Trek universe, but we go back in time. Once again, a new version of Spock. Let's bring back Captain Pike and Number One from the cage. Let's do a...
And can I just say also, the set design on Strange New Worlds, I find insanely depressing. Like, you can kind of see some of it in the background here, but it's, it's strange. There's how can I describe it? Except that it's like this kind of plastic, sterile, blue lighting. Like, no, that's not blue lighting. That's not what I mean. Fluorescent lighting. It's like a fluorescent office lighting kind of vibe. Everything is so overly bright. Everything is so overly, I hesitate to say the word colorful, because, the original series is very colorful and very bright. The Enterprise D is a very bright set. But something about the Enterprise D felt mature to me. Something about those corridors felt mature to me. In this, I swear, I feel like I'm in a kind of... What can I describe it? Except it's like a kind of Ready Player One, saccharine, just it's like a fake world. There's something about it. It feels sterile. It feels clinical to me. I really despise the sets in Strange New Worlds. I kind of despise, it's like they go so overboard to make everything look so technological that it kind of kills it because there's no creature comforts to it. There's no warmth to it, despite all of the brightness.
Picard series where we're going to take Captain Picard, make him an older man, and make him appear and act nothing like the character of Jean-Luc Picard in order to serve as something to do what?
I do not know.
Star Trek Discovery, let's every season, let's change the premise, bring new things in, try and make it work. We wind up with a vat of gobbledygook of things that make no sense, nothing that seems to work, and pseudoscience and fantasy that would be rejected by even the worst pulp fiction writer.
I have had enough of you!
And it's strange to me that we are watching over the last 12 years a franchise being run into the ground, new showrunners every season. The same people that stick around are the ones that are also responsible for really horrifically bad science fiction and terrible television storytelling. There's no real science going on. Nothing makes sense.
Everything about this seems wrong.
Even the vision or the thought behind the galaxy itself. How big is it? Well, the people certainly who are writing Star Trek have no understanding of any of that.
I don't know.
Which is currently on display in every episode of the show. They're just trying things.
Dude, they have no concept of the ship size. They have no concept of distance. And have you noticed this? This is also the problem in Star Wars. This is, in Star Wars, in all of the new stuff, they just hyperlight to wherever they want to go. They're instantly there. There's like no time. There's no travel time. There's no complex calculations to jump anywhere. It's just, let's just hyperspace. And then in Rise of Skywalker, it's let's hyper skip. Let's just hyperlight jump through the galaxy like it's nothing. The Holdo maneuver. I mean, they've taken The Mandalorian season 3 is a perfect example. It's like distance does not exist in this galaxy, and it makes the galaxy far, far away is beginning to feel smaller and smaller and smaller. We're beginning to retread the same planet. The cities on these planets are feeling less and less populated, less and less lived in. And I feel like Kurtzman Trek is exactly the same problem. It's like basically, the introduction of the spore drive in Discovery is it's tantamount to the Holdo maneuver in The Last Jedi, because it's essentially breaking the world. It is breaking the entire concept of like limited, the distances in space in order to travel somewhere. Because if you don't know, the spore drive can simply instantaneously warp to any point in the universe. By the way, they have this spore drive. Why do they never explore a neighboring galaxy? Why do they never explore a galaxy on the other side of the universe? I don't know, but they don't. And we're supposed to believe that the galaxy never knew that this technology existed. It's never been invented again. It can't be recreated. Okay.
That may or may not work. And the problem is, when you listen to any of the Star Trek showrunners talk, they just spout talking points.
I don't know.
I never feel like I'm getting something really from them personally. When Akiva Goldsman says he went to his first convention, he never waxed rhapsodic about a certain episode. Like, what was your favorite episode of Star Trek, Akiva Goldsman? And could you give me a half an hour, do a half an hour riff on it? I never feel that anybody that is working on modern Star Trek has anything to say of any kind of weight or give me any sense that they understand what they're doing. I mean, hey, it's a good cushy job, yes. But I just feel that everyone there is fake, phony. You get the gig. Michelle Paradise, not someone who I see as some great Star Trek fan.
I can't answer some of these questions.
Of course, you're going to say you're a Star Trek fan. And you look over at Star Wars and you got people like Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau who are clearly Star Wars fans. Everything on Star Trek, the ship designs, the art direction, it feels like there's nobody who's running the show that you go, why are these decisions being made? Like, who thought this stuff up? Every time
And that was definitely the key difference with Star Trek Picard season 3 is, you had Terry Matalas as an absolute fluke, a total anomaly, getting to run the show for one season only. And what a gift that was. What an absolute gift was Star Trek Picard Season 3. And you could just tell. You could just tell that Metalis loves Star Trek. That final episode when they get, or actually I would say it was the penultimate episode of the season, when they walk onto the bridge, spoilers, but it's been a while, so if you've missed it, this one's on you. They walk onto the bridge of the Enterprise D. It is one of the most incredible, earned, beautiful moments. And it's the final bookend to the Next Generation story. And it was so beautifully done. You know, I said on my last stream, you could not have made this musical episode of Strange New Worlds. You could not have made this stupid Klingon auto-tune bullshit unless you hate Star Trek. Well, I submit to you, you could not have made that scene where the Next Gen crew walk onto the Enterprise D bridge one last time. You could never have had that scene work and land with that much weight and not have it just be member berries, but something meaningful and powerful. You could never have done that unless you have true love of Star Trek lore. And so he's exactly right that these people, they say that they like Star Trek. They don't. Star Trek is odd to them. It's weird. It's nerd shit. They don't like it. And so I get, look, Robert Meyer Burnett's right. We should not tell anyone not to like something, but I will say this. If you find yourself liking Star Trek Lower Decks, or you find yourself liking the first 2 seasons of Picard, fine. But you do not like what made Star Trek a great show. You do not like what Star Trek was originally created to be. You just don't.
Read anything about Star Trek today, all of it is to try and turn Star Trek into something that it isn't. Let's make it appeal to kids. Star Trek isn't supposed to be for children. It's supposed to appeal to children. But
now this is one of his most brilliant points. I love what he says here.
It's supposed to appeal to everyone. That's why real Star Trek fans started out as children and grew up with it. That's why Star Trek was successful for 40 years, because it put its hooks in you early on and you grew up with it.
It's been a long road.
Modern Star Trek ran for 18 years. TNG to the end of Enterprise, 18 years, 25 seasons of TV. That's a long run. What I don't understand is, why isn't somebody looking at that? Why isn't somebody going to the Berman run of Star Trek and go, wow, this was successful on TV? And sure, there was the law of diminishing returns. There was things that were changing.
It's been a long road.
But it's still, they gave us a quality program for 18 years. Star Trek Discovery has changed its premise every year. They can't even go 2 years without changing what they're doing. Yep, after 2 years.
And Gary Beekler over at Nerdrotic had a great point about this also, which is, can you just name one iconic episode of Star Trek Discovery? Can you name one episode? It's like, oh yeah, remember that episode when they encountered, the weird aliens that did this or that? It's like, there's nothing like that. It's so soulless is Discovery. I suddenly just had a strange paranoia that I may not be sharing audio, and I just have to double check that I am. Yes, here we go. Yes, okay, cool. Good. All righty. We resume. Okay, what is the next part that I want to show you? Yeah, we'll continue on to Star Trek Picard, because I think I don't want to play too much. He does make some amazing points about Star Trek Picard, but I could bend your ear on that. I'll just tell you, I agree completely with his points, which are that Star Trek Picard is an absolutely nihilistic dystopian murder fest, is basically what it is. But I'll play this one little part here.
Meant to that, what was going on at the time, what would you tell me? And he just laughed. He goes, I don't even know what you're talking about. I'm like, exactly.
Fought countless enemies over the years.
They are not the characters they are portraying. They're actors portraying a character that is written for them. And another thing they don't know is the lore. One of the things that surprised me when we did the Blu-rays for Next Generation is I sat down with Brent Spiner. I sat down with all the cast and interviewed them for hours on end. We had a long time with them and you can see those interviews on the Blu-rays. But Brent Spiner told me, and I believed him. He said, I've never seen a full episode of Next Generation. The only things I've seen are the movies. And I was like, really? And he said, look, I made the episodes. I know what they were. Why would I go back and watch them? Now, Michael Dorn was the opposite. Michael Dorn, classic film fan. Michael Dorn watched the episodes. He knew the episodes. He also had an encyclopedic knowledge of classic movies. And by the way, he kicks fucking ass in Picard season 3.
And Michael Dorn also he contributed so much to the Star Trek canon. Like his contributions of like a lot of the Klingon weapons you see, he helped invent. He helped invent some of the moves that you see Worf do in like Deep Space Nine. Like Worf became such an incredible character over the course of, Star Trek: The Next Generation and then Deep Space Nine. And so much of that goes to the fact that Worf had Michael Dorn had such a passion for his character of Worf.
Slaughtered countless enemies over the years and considered sending their heads to all of them.
I'm not going to diss on Patrick Stewart, but when I interviewed Patrick Stewart for those Blu-rays, one of the first things I said to him was, I'm not going to ask you about Star Trek. And he laughed and he said, what do you mean? I said, well, if I were to ask you about the Battle of Narendra 3 and the geopolitical situation between the Romulans and the Klingons at that time and what the loss of the Enterprise C meant to that, what was going on at the time, what would you tell me? And he just laughed. He goes, I don't even know what you're talking about. I'm like, exactly.
I've seen everything. I've seen it all.
And that guy, because of his power as an actor, was put in a position where he's designing stories for a show that obviously he was in, but he was outside of it. So I
just wanted to, so that is one of the major problems with Star Trek Picard. And I believed from the very beginning, Patrick Stewart was a big reason why that show sucked. I think that whole show was a self-insert for Patrick Stewart. He just wanted to make a show about all of his favorite things. He had a lot of control and input, and it was his idea of why Picard is such a beloved character, and just trashed that character in the first 2 seasons. But we're not here to discuss Picard. We are here to discuss Strange New Worlds.
Worlds is New Coke. It's the Vegas show version of Star Trek. Tonight at the Wynn, see the greatest show on the strip, Star Trek, Strange New Worlds. See the romance, see the colors, see Captain Pike cook for everybody. Because he does. I really do like
there's
the
a good shot,
Strange
actually.
New
I
Worlds.
want to
see the greatest show on the strip, Star Trek, Strange New Worlds.
Yeah.
See the romance, see the colors.
Look at this bridge. It just seriously for a minute. This is supposed to be the bridge of the original Kirk Enterprise. Now, I'm the first one to admit that the original series, 1960s, you see that bridge. It's, it's 1970s. It's very colorful. And of course, it's very dated if you're watching it from today's perspective. And you might look at it and think, well, that looks pretty cheesy. I would take that bridge over this crap, this dreck, any day. Any day. In fact, that makes me think of, there were a couple of episodes where they recreate that bridge. Oh, yes. So there's an episode in Star Trek: The Next Generation where they recreate the original series bridge. It's called Relics, where Scotty comes back. It was great. There's another episode in Star Trek Enterprise where the Mirror Universe Archer takes command of essentially a Constitution-class starship, so it's a sister ship to the Enterprise. He takes command of it, and they lovingly recreated every detail of that ship. I wonder if I can find it. See if I can find that for you. And if you're liking the Star Trek talk, if you're liking digging into Star Trek, hit like, subscribe, share it out there. How would I locate this? In a mirror, darkly, Constitution Bridge. Maybe that would find it. I wish I could just show it to you because it's super cool. USS Defiant. This might be what I need. Hang on. Loading. Here we go. There it is. Okay, cool. Yes. Okay, I'm gonna play this for you. Just for a minute. And you just tell me, because this is the new bridge that you're looking at right here. I want to show you what. So this was Star Trek Enterprise, you know, for its day, a pretty much more modern budget. They had CGI at their disposal. And this is what they did when they showed the original Enterprise bridge.
Into another universe. The ship is not only from another universe, it's from another time.
See if I can find it here. There it is. So it's the Defiant. There was an episode of the original series. See, right there. Look at how they recreate the original bridge. There's little details to make it a little more lifelike, a little more real, like the monitors right there. And they managed to give you the sense that this truly is a super advanced ship for its time. Now, I just compare that with what they put forward. Let's see if I can find...
No sign of the regulators. Without them, we can't initialize.
What is with this weird music? Anywho, all right, enough of that. Let me go back. So back to Robert Meyer Burnett's brilliant points here. I just find everything in these new sets. They are sterile, they're cold, they're clinical. I just hate the new bridge.
See Captain Pike cook.
Look at Captain Pike's quarters here.
Because he does.
Now, there's things about it I do like. I do like that his cabin is enormous. I mean, this is a little ridiculous. Like, Cisco did not have this large of a cabin on the freaking space station, Deep Space Nine. I mean, this thing looks like a house. So this is a bit ridiculous. But I like the structure of the bulkheads. I like that you see these bulkheads and these beams. I like that there's, some creature comforts and some style to it. I actually think part of the problem with this is it looks a little too comfortable. He's got a full kitchen. What he should have is a captain's mess. He should have a captain's mess, which is attached to the galley, and it's a private captain's area, and that's where he's entertaining his guests. Not in his cabin. Unless I've got something wrong here, and this is a different part of the ship. But no, I think this is supposed to be his cabin. It's ridiculous. This just goes to show they do not understand the size of these ships. They don't understand kind of the military tradition of Starfleet, nor do they care.
I really do like the cast of Strange New Worlds. Beginning with Anson Mount, I think the cast is uniformly excellent.
This is where we part company, Mr. Burnett. I like Anson Mount. Yeah, that's it. Yep, that's it. And frankly, I can only barely tolerate Anson Mount anyway because of what he is in. He is in this garbage heap. But all the head shaved chicks, pass. Hard pass.
Excellent. I think that where all of modern Star Trek has fallen down is in the really substandard, infantilized teenage writing that we get.
How close do you want to get? First date or third date?
I get used to having a woman on the bridge.
Star Trek Strange New World should be...
Oh my God. They are absolute children on these ships. How close do you want to get? Third date, first date? I honestly am like, this is gross LA culture, basically. It's what you have in the modern Federation.
One of the most sophisticated science fiction shows that has ever been on television. And I feel like it's YA Star Trek. it feels entirely infantilized. But the thing that I really hate the most about Strange New Worlds is the infantilization of Spock. They've basically turned Spock into a teenager / college student where almost everyone is smarter than he is. Dr. Mbenga gives Spock his Vulcan harp and tells him to start playing it. Why is it that at any instance they have to have Spock, oh, here's the first time you've ever done this? Why is it like here's what I do not understand. In this season, you see Pike teaching Spock to cook. Why? It drives me crazy. The gentlemen that wrote this episode are Henry Alonso Myers and Akiva Goldsman. They really run Star Trek Strange New Worlds. It's their show. So when you see this first episode, you're getting their opinion of what Star Trek is supposed to be in its purest form. And in its purest form is to just steal random plot points from Star Trek's history. The idea of having a character based on Khan Noonien Singh, it's Akiva Goldsman doing what Akiva Goldsman does, which is make wrong choices and frankly, dumb decisions all the time. One of my favorite books is Mark Halperin's book, A Winter's Tale. Akiva Goldsman wrote and directed that film. I can't remember a worse adaptation of a novel. I walked out of the theater seething. Not many people went to the theater, but I walked out seething with anger. And most of Akiva Goldsman's successes have been adapting other people's work because it's Akiva Goldsman. And if he's not adapting somebody else, his original ideas, not so good.
We try always to have the characters show up not the way we last saw them.
Your intellect is as weak as your dollar. Failure is your destiny. You disrespect yourself. You are made of stupid.
It makes me angry. It makes me angry because I, as a viewer, since I was 5 years old, always expected to see Star Trek punching above my weight class. It used to.
Now, this point that he makes is maybe my favorite. That is probably my favorite point he makes in this entire video. And by the way, hat tip, Robert Meyer Burnett, the Burnett Network. Do like and subscribe. The video is The State of Modern Star Trek. And I've played a lot of this. Not all of it, but I have played a couple of important points. So I will make sure I add this to the description after the stream so that you can check it out. But this point he's about to make is brilliant because one of the things he said earlier is that, you know, they and this isn't just a Star Trek problem. This is like in every TV show. This is Marvel. This is all of it. You know, they decide, oh, we want to make a show that's aimed at kids. And I'm telling you, I go to friends of mine's houses that have kids and they're watching stuff like Trolls or just, I mean, it's been a while since I can even name one of the kids' shows. Paw Patrol's okay, I guess. I mean, I guess. It seems acceptable to me. But in any case, you know, they'll be watching something like Trolls. It's just mindless garbage. And I just think, this is what you think that kids want? You know, I'm not saying that you can't have, you know, kids' content be a little bit different. But when I was a kid, I liked watching MacGyver. You know, I liked watching MacGyver. I liked watching Quantum Leap. Quantum Leap was one of my favorite shows when I was a kid. I used to watch it with my dad. These are not kids shows. You know, when I watched Spider-Man or I watched Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I watched Ghostbusters, the real Ghostbusters. The things I liked about those shows often were the scientific concepts. The things I liked about those shows were often the more kind of, you know, the problem solving and the characters having to figure their way out of something. I watch kid shows now, and I think their opinion of children is that children are drooling, slobbering mental invalids, and that banging pans in front of them is the only way that you can hold their attention. It's the equivalent of like when you see adults babble to babies, which is, you know, if you understand like infant psychology, when infants are babbling, they're actually saying, they've measured this in a clinical environment. They are actually saying pieces of real words. They're saying real pieces of syllables and syntax that they're picking up. So when babies are babbling, it isn't actually gibberish. It's the beginnings of language. And when we speak to babies in that exaggerated way that we do, we're actually, without even realizing it, helping them learn to speak. So in other words, what I'm saying is it does not benefit a baby to just speak in what we think is gibberish. That doesn't help them. They're not speaking in gibberish because they like speaking in gibberish. They're speaking in gibberish because they're learning. And how are they learning? They're learning from hearing us speak the actual language. And so what my point is that these idiots that make these shows like Star Trek Prodigy, Miss Marvel, they are dumbing it down. This idiot, Tomek Berginski, who's talking about, well, we have to simplify it because the audience won't get it. And the younger you are, the less plot that you actually need. It's like, no, it's quite the opposite, sir. You don't speak like you don't treat children like they're idiots. And this is what I love about Star Trek. No, it is not intended specifically for a child's audience, but it can be a great show for kids to watch. And I loved it when I was a kid. I absolutely loved it. So returning to how Robert puts it here, it's just brilliant.
To be smarter than me. Deep Space Nine was smarter than me. Nothing that happens in modern Star Trek ever surprises me. I'm always ahead of the plotting. I'm always like, they took this from this, and this from this, and this from this. I am not surprised by anything.
And may I just say, this is a marvelously well-edited video, by the way. Great work, Mr. RBG.
Star Trek. And what's interesting is if you look at other shows like House of the Dragon, I even knew what was going to happen in House of the Dragon. But their portrayal of what's going on in Westeros, it keeps you on the edge of your seat because it's not talking down to you. Why isn't Star Trek on the cutting edge of science fiction?
See, this is excellent point number one in this kind of larger argument he's making here. These idiots, these brainlets, Akiva Goldsman and Alex Kurtzman, and I'll just throw Patrick Stewart in there too because he's guilty of the same crime against intellectual thought. And that is, they seem to think, like Mr. Berginski would say, that you got to dumb it down. Star Trek is too complicated. There's too much science. It's for nerds. And it's like, but what was the successful fantasy show that was running last year? It was House of the Dragon. And House of the Dragon was able to communicate more in a scene with two characters silently looking at each other than a show like Rings of Power communicated in 1,000 lines of dialogue. So the evidence of current entertainment does not even bear out this harebrained crackpot opinion they have of their own audience, and that sci-fi will never work unless it's dumb teenage melodrama.
Why are we watching in every episode a regurgitated Star Trek idea from somewhere else? As a thought exercise, watch Amok Time and then watch Journey to Babel. Then watch episode 5 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Give me something that's...
Challenge accepted. I'm going to do this. And I will report the results to you, my dear sailors and star knots.
Not so dumbed down. Why is it that Strange New Worlds can only go into our history when it's explaining something? One of the great things I used to love about Star Trek was when it's like the Magna Carta or the Declaration of Independence. And then somebody would list like 5 other things that we didn't know what they were because they were made up sci-fi things from other planets. Strange New Worlds doesn't do that. Let's go back and make Stacey Abrams the president of the world. Let's talk about the January 6th insurrection. I hate it.
I am not a merry man.
Again, monumental failure of creativity. Another thing I can't stand on Star Trek Strange New Worlds, I have no problem with lots of female characters. But why is it that when people come to fix the Enterprise, to give it upgrades, why is it all the male people that are coming on the ship? Why are they all put in their place by the women, by Ortegas and by Uhura? Uhura's an ensign. Well, no, I fixed the...
It's called intersectional feminism. It's called woke, radical, leftist, lunatic insanity, Mr. Burnett. I'm just trying to help out.
These things myself, and these guys, you'd think these are Starfleet engineers. Why is it that they're put down? There's a really weird undercurrent of male hatred in Star Trek. The first time Pike is introduced, he's introduced with one of his crew is one.
But honestly, I would also say it extends beyond just the usual intersectional feminist garbage, the misandrist attitudes of these writers. It's also the fact that I honestly think we have entered, and social media maybe is the cause, maybe it's the decay of Western civilization. I don't know. It's probably a lot of things. But I also think it's just an overextension of it's an overcorrection from the somewhat overly puritanical concepts of hard work and pull yourself up by the bootstraps, which then overcorrected into you have to love yourself and self-affirmation, and you have to, you believe in yourself, which those are laudable concepts, but I think they've been taken to the extreme. And what we've got is a kind of narcissistic culture in which the social currency is snark. It's, how snarky can you be to anyone that you disapprove of? And I sense this, among all the characters in Star Trek. There is this undercurrent of snarkiness to each other that is extremely off-putting. It's off-putting in all of these shows. And it's not just in this, it's in the MCU. It's in a lot of, it's in modern Star Wars. It's in a lot of the stuff that we're seeing.
One of the most annoying fuckheads I've ever seen in not just Star Trek, but in any television show. And he's introduced as part of Pike's crew. And he's set up from the beginning to be an annoying asshole so he can be killed in the episode.
Oh, wait, no.
Not just Stardust. He's introduced the undercurrent of male hatred in Star Trek. The first time Pike is introduced, he's introduced with one of his crew as one of the most annoying fuckheads I've ever seen in not just Star Trek, but in any television show. And he's introduced as part of Pike's crew. And he's set up from the beginning to be an annoying asshole so he can be killed in the episode. They kill him. And the reason they kill him is because he's annoying. I mean, it's amazing. The Star Trek short takes, the one with the tribbles, perhaps one of the most offensive science fiction 15 minutes or whatever that I've ever seen.
I guess the question is whether Mr. Barclay is Enterprise material. And I assume by your request for his transfer that you think he's not, Commander.
I just don't think you're the right fit for the kind of work we're doing here, so I've requested to have you transferred.
It's easy to transfer a problem to someone else.
This conversation's over. You're dismissed.
Too easy.
This is the end of the conversation.
He's a member of your team.
I'm having you transferred. End of conversation.
Try to find some way to help him to make a positive contribution. Get to know the man better.
Captain, if I could.
You can't.
Right, but I have this as
The conversation's over. That's the end.
It's been a long road, getting from there to here.
Epic fail. Epic fail.
That scene right there in that Star Trek short is that's like the perfect example of exactly what I'm talking about. Notice how it's just pure snarkiness. It's just pure, like they think that is the sign of success, power, and leadership. That is it. These are people writing this crap. They've never flown bombers in a war. They have never had to endure hardship. They have never been through, traumatic times. Oh, they think they have. Oh, give me your trauma. Their trauma is, that they've had to work at Walmart to pay the bills once. That's their trauma. This is basically people who have no concept of what an actual leader is, what true servant leadership is. The idea that this captain drags this guy in before her and treats him like he's a piece of human garbage. Look, I'll grant for the sake of argument that this character is a bad crew member. He's a bad crew member. Let's just grant that. The fact that she treats him like he's worthless as a human being is essentially, this is what you would write if you've spent your whole life in a corporate knife fight, backstabbing, garbage political culture, which is where all these writers come from. It's if I'm going to stand in this dress all day long, I demand to be paid. These are the people that are, I think about, there's a great episode of Star Trek Voyager called The Good Shepherd. And it's a Lower Decks episode. Oh God, that phrase has been ruined forever, but I digress. It's a Lower Decks episode in which Janeway is notified that there are 3 members of the crew who are dragging their feet. And there's several things I like about the episode, but for one thing, it actually kind of tackles the idea of like Voyager was never supposed to be on a mission this long. And so one of the reasons that these crew members are kind of not working out is that normally they actually would have either left Starfleet or they probably would have been reassigned at some point. Some of them just wanted to, do 2 years of service to like get whatever they needed to become the professional in the civilian world they wanted to be. So it's kind of the equivalent of like they were doing National Guard on the weekends and then they just wound up getting stuck on this ship in the Delta Quadrant. Anyway, they've slipped through the cracks, and Tuvok says, "Oh, I'll get them in line." And then Janeway says, "No, I assign them to me. I want to take them under my wing. They just need to feel like they're a part of something and they're contributing." The whole episode is about how Janeway is dedicated to bringing these 3 failing crew members back. And it's a great episode. I kind of the final act of it kind of goes off the rails, I think, but it works. But I just love that element. I love that, in Star Trek, there's a concept in Star Trek that every life has dignity and value. Every life, at the risk of running afoul of the Wokies, every life matters. Every life has dignity, meaning, and purpose. And even people that are our enemies. And by the way, Seth MacFarlane's Orville does this concept excellently in the Orville series. But even those that are our enemies, even those that wish to do us harm, at the end of the day, they still have rights. They are still, life forms in this universe. And, obviously, if we have to, defend ourselves and that results in their deaths, we're going to do that. But we don't wish it. We don't wish it on them. What we rather would have is peace. So anyway, my point is that every life has meaning and significance. And this snarky, bitchy attitude of like, just because this guy sucks at his job, that he deserves to be treated this way, it's disgusting. Frankly, I find this behavior disgusting in the year 2023. I find this behavior absolutely, this would be a toxic work environment. This bitch should be freaking fired. She is of no use to anyone on her. I'm saying, let's just imagine she's a manager in a corporate environment. In my view, her leadership style is scum. It's absolute scum. This is what they think a captain is in Star Trek. Akiva Goldsman and Alex Kurtzman are scum. They are absolute scumbag writers. I detest them. The kind of people that think that would be, there is so much malice behind that attitude. There is so much negativity. There is such a glee in putting someone else down. And that is what frustrates me so much about this attitude of this character. Janeway, Sisko, Picard, Archer, Kirk would never treat the worst of their crew members this way, ever. Yeah, we'll skip that. Also, that's what nerds have always loved. Nerds have always loved fantasy and sci-fi because it takes us to new worlds. It shows us different possibilities, different cultures. It shows us cultures that are literally alien, cultures that are fantastical. The elves, the dwarves, warring factions, seeking to understand each other. I was just watching a great episode of Stargate SG-1 in which Teal'c is and the SG-1 team are coming up against an alien culture with a very unforgiving legal attitude. And it's a clash of cultures, and it's a story about these cultures working it out. And we will get to that soon. But my point is, it is criminal to me that it is we nerds that have made all this stuff what it is. We have made Star Trek, Star Wars, The Lord of the Rings, to the extent that they are popular, the Marvel universe, the DC universe, to the extent that these things are popular, it is because of the nerds that enjoyed the idea of meeting other cultures. And that included naturally, without anyone having to say the word, without anyone having to shove it in, it just naturally resulted in diversity. And so it's ironic to me that the diversity, representation whiners are the ones that seem to think that nerds are the toxic anti-diversity crowd. It could not be further from the truth. Do you see diversity when every when every chick on the bridge has her head shaved? Is that diversity? That's a cult. That is a freaking Branch Davidian, cult. Not Branch Davidians. What's the other one? Who are the ones that Heaven's Gate? That is the Heaven's Gate right there. And I used to look at the Star Trek characters, or any character that I considered a heroic character, even like watching Master and Commander, Lucky Jack Aubrey. I look at those characters and I aspired to be like them. I aspired to be like Captain Picard. I aspired to be like Horatio Hornblower. I aspired to be like Peter Parker. Characters that sacrifice themselves for others. Characters that inspire hope in others and lead others through horrific, terrible situations, but they're able to stay, confident, in command, make a rational decision, defend their position rhetorically, to stand for what's right when it's not easy. I used to look at those characters and say, those aren't me. Those aren't who I am. I want to be like them. That's what a story is supposed to do. That is what we have lost in this representation culture, is that you shouldn't want to see yourself on screen. You should want to see someone on screen that inspires you to be to, as you would put it in that crowd, be better. You should see characters that you actually want to step into the identities of and imagine yourself achieving your potential the way those characters do. You should not be looking for yourself. Narcissus, ladies and gentlemen. And we will leave it there. So check out the rest of his video, The State of Modern Trek, How Has It Come to This, by Robert Meyer Burnett. Hat tip, the Burnett Network. This is the man that convinced me to watch Star Trek Picard Season 3. It was not conceivable to me. Dang it. I wasn't sharing my screen. All right, let me play that back. Hang on. There it is. Let me see if I can find. Okay. That part. Right.
And everything, because we live in a narcissistic, navel-gazing culture. I liked a Star Trek where I met people I didn't know, people I aspired to be, not people that I recognized myself in them. And I don't understand what that obsession with people today is. Well, I want to see myself. I need to feel that I'm identified in the shows that I watch. I never wanted to watch shows or movies where I'm in them. I wanted to meet people I didn't know, people from different cultures, people who felt differently than I did. Star Trek now is being written for infants. It's being written for dumb people. And I know that a lot of people like it. And I don't mean to criticize the audience. The audience certainly isn't dumb. The audience is looking for compelling, great science fiction. You can tell because all of the shows that everybody is watching, from Yellow Jackets to Yellowstone to Succession to Better Call Saul to White Lotus, take your pick. Whatever your favorite show is, it's a good bet. You imagination connoisseurs, you are smart, astute viewers. And you want great programming. And I know this because everybody I know is watching great television. And I just feel that this audience, we imagination connoisseurs and the audience at large, we're the same people loving Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon. We deserve House of the Dragon level science fiction to watch. And Star Trek should be there.
There it is. So yeah, I think I missed that. My apologies. There you have it. So he convinced me with he's very eloquent. The guy's very persuasive, I have to say. Now, I definitely think he goes a little easier on some of these shows than I would. And the thing about modern Star Trek is it took me a while to reach this level of absolute hatred for it. It really did. In fact, I would say Star Trek Picard is really what put me in this mental space, because I was still watching Star Trek Discovery and there was a lot about it I did not like. There were occasionally episodes where I thought, oh, that was kind of cool. Always, there was always a feeling of like something is missing. Something is not right here. There are just little scenes that just annoy the crap out of me and I can't quite put my finger on it. And then with Picard, it just became clear to me. It's like, this is not the Federation. This is not Star Trek. I will say with Discovery, I definitely had that feeling that like right from the first episode when she's on this prison transport, and I'm like, this is not prison in the Federation. I knew that this was the wrong tone for Star Trek. So I guess what I'm actually saying is I knew it was wrong, but I was still persisting in watching it because some part of me was hoping that like maybe I'm just being, ossified as a fan. I'm just not allowing myself to be open to something new, or maybe it'll get better. Maybe, this is just a bad run of episodes. And it's like, no, this is a systemic misunderstanding of what Star Trek is supposed to be. So I quite like his point there. That what we deserve is the House of the Dragon level quality in Star Trek writing. And I don't enjoy the fact that I arrived at the point of literally detesting everything Kurtzman Trek, everything new Trek. It took them a lot of effort, these malicious asshats that write this crap. It took them a lot of effort to make me have this much animus towards the Star Trek series. So, yes, sadly, that is as it is. Not much we can do about it. So let's just talk about something a little more fun, shall we? Let's talk about Stargate SG-1. Now, what was the name of the episode I watched? I like remembering the name of episodes if I can. Stargate SG-1 Season 1 episodes. I can definitely recount to you what happened in the episode. I just forget the name of it. It was episode 14. It was, no, it wasn't 14. That was Hathor. It was 16. Core I. There you go. Yep. Okay. So, the captain has had a breach of decorum here. I must have the correct background. Hang on. We need a better background here. There we go. And let me give you there it is. All right. So the episode of Stargate SG-1, this is season 1, episode 16, Core I. Now this episode, definitely one of my favorites so far. So they arrive on a planet. There's a primitive culture there. They're roughly sort of Greco-Roman kind of a culture. And right away, we have a problem because the second that they see Teal'c, Teal'c being the carrier of the Goa'uld, what's the word that they call Teal'c? He's it starts with an F. It's like it's what they call the carriers of the Goa'ulds. Anyway, so they immediately identify that that's what he is, and they arrest him. The locals in the village, one of the locals in the village basically says Teal'c he murdered my father. And the SG-1 team is immediately like, well, no, that can't be true. That didn't happen. And Teal'c is very quiet. He keeps very mum. May I just say, the actor who plays Teal'c, he is really good at having a resting scowl face. Like he has got an absolute scowl on his face at all times. And I approve. Captain, salute. That is an appropriate amount of scowl. That is a proper amount of scowl. And so the SG-1 team, they launch into pleading on his behalf. They launch into, saying, he's innocent. You got him all wrong. He didn't kill anybody. And the locals just won't hear it. And so they drag him into this kind of trial. And I believe the trial itself is called Core I. And this is not an innocent until proven guilty trial. This is you are guilty until proven innocent. And there were a couple of moments that stood out to me, such as essentially the SG-1 team winds up in the position of having to defend him. And it reminded me a lot of just classic Star Trek episodes in which, one of the crew members runs afoul of the local laws. And because of the prime directive, the captain has to find a way to either, represent them and win the trial, or they've got to find a way to some legal loophole. They got to find a way to get their crewmen out without violating the laws of the land. And this is kind of a similar episode, but it also functions as really just a Teal'c-centric episode. So one of the things I noticed right away is I quite enjoyed hearing Colonel Jack O'Neill arguing for things like, well, hasn't anyone heard of innocent till proven guilty? Now, it's a bit quaint. It's a bit quaint. But I also miss that. I miss that, the American... Let me just explain something. Americanism. Americanism is an ideology. It is my ideology. More than, I don't think of myself as a Republican. I don't think of myself as a Democrat or an independent. I think of myself as an Americanist. What does an Americanist believe? Well, it's right there in the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution. That's where it is, sir. And I refer you to those documents, those aforementioned documents. And this concept of innocent until proven guilty, we as Americans, and we more broadly in Western civilization, countries, subject to English common law, we prize this idea. We prize it above all. Innocent until proven guilty. Everyone is entitled to a defense. Justice is blind. All that great stuff. And that stuff used to just roll off the tongue for us. It was like, that was just, we expected it. We expected. And by the way, Star Trek, in its original 5 series, was very much invested in all of those ideas and all of those traditions. Some of the most powerful episodes are like when, Measure of a Man, when Captain Picard is defending the rights of Data, or The Drumhead, where Captain Picard is facing a witch hunt against his crew, or the episode Author in Voyager, in which Janeway has to defend the Doctor's rights to his intellectual property as an artist, or I forget the name of the episode, but the episode where Benjamin Sisko is being wrongfully imprisoned for defying a local colonist on a planet, and he has to stand up to her. It's like it's one of the best episodes of Deep Space Nine. It's a brilliant episode. What's the name of that episode? I can find it for you. Yeah, he's placed in the punishment box. I remember that's what it was. What is the name of the episode is Paradise. Paradise. And what season was this? It was season 2 of Deep Space Nine. Great freaking episode. So these ideas of like the rights of the individual, the right to equal protection, the right to a fair trial, these were knee-jerk reactions. And so I loved seeing Colonel Jack O'Neill just kind of have this somewhat unreasonable knee-jerk reaction of like, well, you can't just pronounce him guilty. Now, what's interesting about this court is that the court proceeds from the idea that the judge will be the person who has suffered the most at the hands of the accused. So therefore, this man whose father was supposedly murdered by Teal'c, he gets to be the judge. And of course, Colonel Jack O'Neill's like, well, you can't do that. He's not impartial. Like, well, but why? Why would you put anyone else in charge of a trial? Obviously, the person who bears the burden of the crime, they're the ones that should be judging the accused. So it's very much a guilty until proven innocent system. And I guess, so we just went through that whole Robert Meyer Burnett diagnosis, that surgical, laser-like, brilliantly edited video in which Robert Meyer Burnett diagnoses why the new Kurtzman Trek, why the modern Star Trek is not Star Trek. Why, as I like to say, it is glossy garbage. Completely devoid of any moral core. And one of the things he points out is that Star Trek, science fiction, really, when done properly. In fact, he has kind of this list of tenets that he gives for how to write a Star Trek episode. Let me pull it up for you. Because it's very much germane to this point. Here we go. Let me share. There it is. Okay, so Robert Meyer Burnett gives you this list of points. So this is how you make a proper Star Trek episode. And I would argue this goes for Doctor Who, this goes for Stargate, this goes for any good science fiction. Build your episode on an action-adventure framework. That's number 1. Number 2, tell your story about people. I also think, by the way, that this is in order of importance. So number 2 is tell your story about people. Number 3, science fiction is not a separate field of literature, meaning do not act as though science fiction is exempt from having to be actually a work of literature, a work of actual that raises the bar. Science fiction is not to be regarded as just pulp, dime novel, trash, do whatever you want because it's just science fiction. No, science fiction is just as important, is just as powerful a way of communicating a literary story as any other type of story. Number 4, interweave in it any statement to be made about man, society, and so on. Number 5, remember always that Star Trek, or in this case, Stargate, is never fantasy. Number 6, don't try to tell a story about whole civilizations, meaning don't just try and give, drop all the exposition ever about the whole civilization. Don't make every single issue a world-threatening situation. Hello, multiverse. Hello, modern Marvel. This is the problem with modern Marvel. Every new Marvel film now tries to tell a story about a whole civilization or a whole multiverse or a whole galaxy that's about to be devoured. And number 7, stop. I would even say these rules apply to superhero stories. These rules, in my view, absolutely apply to Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, you name it. These apply to all of those. Number 7, stop worrying about not being a scientist. So this is, in other words, this is the rules for a Star Trek writer, right? These are the old school rules for how you do an effective. So one more time, build your episode on an action-adventure framework. Tell your story about people. Remember that science fiction is not a separate field of literature. It is part of literature. Number 4, interweave in it any statement to be made about man, society, and so on. Remember always, number 5, that Star Trek is never fantasy. Comic books are not, they're, superhero comics are not fantasy. I'm talking, of course, about, Batman, Superman, that sort of thing. Don't try to tell a story about whole civilizations. And finally, stop worrying about not being a scientist. And I think that's brilliant. And this episode that I'm referring to in Stargate SG-1 hits all of those points because it's telling a story about, it starts with the character of Teal'c. And my favorite part of this whole episode is that Teal'c he refuses to fight it. They're basically saying you're going to be put to death. And, O'Neill's trying to hatch all these plans about, well, okay, we're going to fight our way out. We're going to escape. Here's what we're going to do. And Teal'c says, you will do no such thing. I will not run. Why, Teal'c? Why? Why won't you run? Why won't you fight for life? My God, man, why won't you fight? And he's like, no, I will not run. I will not run. And I really like that because, and what's so interesting too is he doesn't just come out and say it. He's a man of few words. It's clear that there's something meaningful here. And I'm kind of ahead of the story because I know, he knows because he's guilty, right? He killed this kid. But what makes it interesting is that at what point does he come clean with his teammates? So that is a major source of the dramatic tension of the episode. One of the things I really like is, okay, so once we figure out that Teal'c is not going to leave the planet, the problem the characters are faced with is how do we win the trial? And it's quite fun watching O'Neill, Carter, and Daniel basically work together to figure out a defense. Daniel is great in this episode, by the way, because he kind of he's very much the kind of lawyer character, sleuthing out kind of how are we going to win in a legal system where basically the victim is the judge, and it's a kangaroo court. It's super great line with O'Neill as well, where he's like, they're like, well, we have to prepare our defense and we have to do this. And O'Neill's like, it's a kangaroo court. There's no way to win this. There's also a great angle in this episode about a kind of prime directive sort of situation. Now, obviously there's no prime directive in Stargate like there is in Star Trek. But there is this idea of the United States, at least under the current administration in the show, does not want to interfere in the inner workings of this society. And so they're reluctant to send a strike team to rescue Teal'c. And then Teal'c eventually admits, look, I committed terrible crimes. As a servant of Ra, I committed terrible atrocities. And frankly, those people deserve retribution. They deserve justice, and they're not going to get it. But this one guy on this one planet, he can get justice, and so I'm not going to fight that. So it's very much an episode about Teal'c grappling with his responsibility for committing war crimes. And him essentially saying, part of it is he wants to take responsibility, but there's another part of it where, frankly, he just himself, he wants expiation. He wants absolution. He wants relief from his guilt. And so part of what's driving him in this episode is just the pure emotion of he feels guilty. And this is a way he can get some relief from that. So, and it's a great performance as well. And let me grab the IMDb so that I can get the actor's name, because I forget the name of the actor who plays Teal'c. So there's that element that it's got going for it. And there's a great debate in this episode between O'Neill and General Hammond that really focuses on, should we save a man who, quite frankly, is a war criminal? I mean, there's a great line where Hammond basically tells O'Neill, look, forget for a second that he's your friend. He is a war criminal. He is flat out a war criminal. And yes, he's been very helpful and he's part of this team. But the fact of the matter is he committed crime. And then, of course, O'Neill replies, well, he was under orders with Ra. And he's like, well, And Hammond says, that's right, but we don't let war criminals off the hook because they decided to do something nice later. And it's a fantastic debate. It's a fantastic moral argument. It's a classic example. What do I always say is wrong with woke storytelling and propaganda storytelling? The reason why it doesn't work is because in woke storytelling, one side is absolutely beyond all reproach, right and just and moral, utterly on a moral pedestal. And the other side in the moral argument is wrong, toxic, patriarchal, oppressive, bigoted, wrong. And they're only, and the audience already knows this. The audience has already been informed. And we are just watching the show play out the humiliation of the wrong character, learning that they're wrong. That is woke storytelling. Good storytelling is when two people are arguing and both are right. And so this is a great example. This episode has multiple kind of angles of getting at that. You know, it's sort of like there's a understandable side of these people that want justice against Teal'c. It's like they basically have been preyed upon by Ra and his people for, you know, decades and decades and decades, maybe centuries, and they never get revenge. They never get justice. They never can fight back. This is like the one time that they actually can get some justice. And so you sympathize with them. But on the other hand, right, you get the sense that, well, obviously it's Teal'c. You can't kill Teal'c. Christopher Judge, that's who plays Teal'c. Does a great job. This is a great episode for him. So I really loved the resolution of this episode because there was a great, I don't know, should I not do spoilers? Let me know in the comments if going forward you want me to do spoilers or not. I will defer to the will of the people. But I will just say one thing I love about the resolution of this episode, there is a theme of forgiveness. There is a theme of redemption. And what I like about it is it doesn't end the easy way, which is, you know, like in Strange New Worlds, the idiot getting hit with the asteroid. Oh, see, you know what's interesting about all the nihilism and the dystopianism and the absolute murder in like Star Trek Picard and Discovery and all these Trek shows. It's easy. You know, it's easy. Just having a character be killed off for being an idiot or annoying or bad, that's the easy way out. Now, on the other hand, there is this other weird predilection, like in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where villains always have to defeat themselves now, or they just have to decide they don't want to be a dick anymore. Okay, that's the other extreme, and I don't like that either. But what I do like is characters that are on opposite sides of an issue, that by the end of the episode, their paradigm is changed. Because of what happens in the journey they go on, their paradigm is changed. And if I sound like I'm being a bit vague here, it's because I don't want to spoil the ending. Because it's a good ending. So there you have it. That is my review of the Stargate episode, number 16 in the series. And fantastic episode for Teal'c. Fantastic episode for reconnecting with what makes truly Star Trek a great show. What made, you know, the science fiction that we used to love, Doctor Who, a great show, Babylon 5, a great show. It is the episode Core I. I would say it's pretty much up there. I'm trying to think of if there's an episode I like more than Core I. And I think probably I would say, oh, the First Commandment was pretty good. That was like the, I want to say that was what, the 4th or 5th episode? Yeah. That was a good one. That was the one where they go to the, it's kind of like a Heart of Darkness, Apocalypse Now kind of tale. They go through the Stargate. They find another SG team where the commander of the team has set himself up as a god and he's ruling like a tyrant. That's a pretty good episode. So yes, check out the episode Core I. All right, and please let me know in the comments, you know, what you think about the time. If you would like evening streams, let me know. I'm open to that. But otherwise, I will resume at the normal. I will see you on Sunday at the normal 1 p.m. time. And we're going to wrap up the stream there. I am your host, Captain Garrett. This is the Captain's Cast on the Swords and Starships channel. And thanks for hanging out with me. Wait, hang on a second. No, where'd I go? Oh, no. No hamburgers. No hamburgers. Man, when is South Park going to come back? I need some South Park badly. I need some South Park badly. But anyway, let me know in the comments what you think about the time. If you like it, we can keep it. But absent any change of plan, I'm going to go back to 1 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern every Sunday and Thursday, the Captain's Cast, in which we will explore strange new entertainment worlds. And one thing I can say is I have given some thought to, shall we say, the balance of, good and unfortunate, let's just say, good and ungood news. So, yes, to use the Orwellian 1984 newspeak, I've been bringing you a lot of double plus ungood news lately. And I will continue to do. But I also want to bring you some good things. So Stargate SG-1 is part of that. I did watch the Matrix trilogy again and loved it. Loved reconnecting. It's such a great hero's journey. Yes, it has its flaws, and I'm sure there are those among you who would debate me about some of the merits of that trilogy, but it is God, it's so much better than the shit we get these days. Oh man, it's real science fiction. I love that. So anyway, I've got some ideas about how I can bring you some happier news, some double plus good news. And so in any case, this has been the Captain's Cast. Thank you for keeping me company, wherever you are, whether you like, subscribe, don't subscribe, just watch it on the restream. Thank you. You have this Captain's undying gratitude. And so I say to you, my dear sailors and star nuts, until next time, I will see you out there.